Hello everyone, welcome back to SwitchUp. In today's video, we've got a review for you of the newly released SpongeBob SquarePants Titans of the Tide. This is a Switch 2 game and we'll dive into it and give you the full SP.
Yeah, big thanks to the publisher for the review copy. Like Glenn says, we're going to go over all areas for a full comprehensive review as well as performance in all modes.
So is this one more of a Krabby Patty or is it a bit of a crappy patty? Well, let's find out. Right, let's start with story then, and as someone that has never really watched the cartoons, I'll try to make this make sense. So, the Flying Dutchman turns up at the Krabby Patty to take advantage of the half-off sale that's going on. However, King Neptune also turns up and cuts in front of him in the line, which annoys him, so much so that he starts firing out a spell that turns people into ghosts. One of those affected is SpongeBob, and this leads the team on an adventure to try and put things right. Now, Patrick, who wasn't there at the time, turns up to help his friend, and they actually find out that they can switch who is the ghost. And this story beat basically explains why you play as one of them, switching between them as you need to.
If you like the humour of SpongeBob, it very much feels like that. Both of us have recently reviewed large RPGs that seem to take themselves a little too seriously. This is the antithesis of that style.
So moving on to gameplay then, and this is a 3D platformer with a character swapping mechanic, as I mentioned a moment ago. You do have a hub area, which is the Krusty Krab, which has been converted into an airship, and you'll travel to different locations as you complete the missions. There are main story quests and also a few side quests that you can partake in too. So you've got SpongeBob and you've got Patrick, as I mentioned. SpongeBob is able to do a flying kick that he can use to burst balloons, which can elevate him higher into levels, and he can also use this on enemies, whereas Patrick can burrow underground and is also able to use a grapple move, which allows him to pick items up or also pull things towards him. Obviously, both of these sets of powers will allow you to traverse and overcome a number of obstacles in these 3D environments.
The stages, as you would expect, have a number of different mechanics to keep things interesting. At one point, Glen was sliding down slides and hopping between different areas. He was riding around on a surfboard, and there are your typical platforming segments with ghostly blocks that you then have to make solid.
Your main objective is shown on the screen, and you can press left, I believe it was, on the D-pad, and whichever character you aren't using, they become a ghost for that time, will fly towards that next objective to give you an idea if you're a little bit stuck. In terms of controls, you'll switch between the two characters by pressing the L button, and there'll be times when you need to do this pretty quickly to take advantage of the powers that I've mentioned both characters have. Mark spoke about the slide areas a moment ago, and there are times where you'll need to use both characters' powers to get down the slide, switching between them on the fly, whilst of course moving at high speed. These made for good gameplay sections, and on the whole, I do feel that this game encapsulates what most people would expect in a 3D platformer and make good use of a lot of the more traditional tropes.
There are also optional objectives that you can carry out for famous faces from the franchise, and they'll be shown on the screen, and you kind of do them in your own time, which is a nice little addition if you are a fan and want to do that little bit extra for some of the characters that you love.
Yep, there are collectibles, there's a shop that you can visit and use the in-game currency to buy costumes that I'm sure will mean a lot more to fans of the show than they did me, but it's nice that they're included. And there are boss battles as well, and these were surprisingly difficult actually. One in particular ramped up quite a lot towards the end where you had to be jumping then burrowing with Patrick to avoid obstacles, and it got quite hectic, when you're down to your last piece of health, which in this game of course is shown by pairs of underpants. Gameplay, as I mentioned, it does exactly what you'd expect a 3D platformer to do, but it does it pretty well to be fair. It gets 14 out of 20. Controls, by a similar notion, assist you much more than they hinder you. Switching between the two characters at times can feel a bit frantic, but it's all good fun. They get 15 out of 20.
The experience runs on Unreal Engine, and with that comes a notable bump in visual quality when running on the Switch 2 compared to the previous releases in the series. It does also feature a quality mode as well as a performance mode, which is just nice to see. Performance mode can hit 60 frames per second, but it doesn't always, and I think when you get those drops below 60, it's quite noticeable, isn't it?
Yeah, we started off in performance mode, and it's one of those where for the first, I say level, you know what I mean? There's areas as opposed to levels, but it actually runs quite consistently. And then as you get further into the game, you do start to really notice those drops. And it is, as Mark mentioned, quite disorientating at times to see them. When you're playing in quality mode, which of course runs at 30 frames per second, it's a much more consistent experience. However, there were still a couple of drops at times. It seems to affect the game when you do anything like jumping from a trampoline, when you reach that apex of the jump, or the slide sections that we mentioned earlier, or another area where the game seems to struggle even in quality mode.
Yeah, and everyone that knows Unreal Engine is probably thinking typical Unreal Engine. It very often is the case. It just seems more difficult to optimize that consistent loading performance, whereas the visuals, they do look strong. Now, we looked at some things like the overall image quality. In quality mode, there's a bump, things like ambient occlusion, the overall resolution. I believe there's something along the lines of up to 4K, but it may be upscaled. But you've got SSR, so screen space reflections, and there's some really nice reflective elements within the game, aren't there?
There are indeed, yeah. There's a time when you're in King Neptune's palace and you can see the reflections on the marble floor, that sort of thing. It does look very impressive. And the game just presents itself very much as if it were an extended version of the show.
It shows a lot of effort, doesn't it, to include a quality and a performance mode. And I think for that reason, we would struggle to necessarily knock the score as much as we would had it been one or the other.
Moving on to audio, and first and foremost, it does have the voice actors from the show, so it does have that feeling of authenticity about it. And Mark, you mentioned that there are custom-made musical tracks that are, if not based on the show, at least in keeping with its style.
Yeah, there's definitely some custom music in here. It gives it quite a fresh feeling. It's not just a case of hearing the songs that you're used to from the show.
Visuals, as Mark mentioned, they've put the effort in, including a performance and a quality mode. It's a shame that there are so many drops in performance mode, and even a couple when playing at 30 in quality mode. But on the whole, it is an impressive looking package if you are a fan of the show. It gets 15 out of 20. Audio, as mentioned, has the voice acting that you would expect, and some nice tracks to play along in the background. It gets 18 out of 20. SpongeBob SquarePants Titans of the Tide costs £34.99 and regional equivalents are on your screen now.
The game will take about 7 to 9 hours to finish. If you're a completionist, you're looking at around 14, and there are over 20 different trophy-style achievements, even in the Switch version.
I think it's fair to say it's one of those games where if you are a fan of the franchise, then you will get more out of it. Just seeing characters you love on screen or playing as them certainly adds more to value, I believe. But it's a decent length, I feel, for a 3D platformer, and it does have those side missions and collectibles to find too. And on balance, value gets 14 out of 20. To conclude, SpongeBob SquarePants Titans of the Tide is a solidly made 3D platformer in terms of level design, with a nice level of humour that you would expect, I'm sure, bearing in mind its source material, and some fair options when it comes to visual fidelity or performance, albeit it does fall just short in this particular area.
Having played all of the other games that were on Switch 1, I do think fans are very much going to enjoy the experience, even if it doesn't necessarily push the boundaries of the genre.
Me, help me, someone handsome preferably, but help me. Me, help me.
It gets a SwitchUp score of 76%. Let us know down in the comments, is this a game series that you've enjoyed in the past? Are you looking forward to this one? And will you be picking it up?
Don't forget, if you are looking for eShop credit to pick this game up, or any other game for that matter, you can use our website, switchup.gg, and doing so will get you 5% of your purchase price back as cashback. And there are links down there to places such as PlayAsia if you want to import any games. And please do consider checking out our second channel, SwitchUp Extra, where we do longer form gameplay videos, with the most recent one looking at Metroid Prime 4 after our short time playing some of it the other day. Thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.
SpongeBob, look!
This is a job for you!